confidence began returning to Australia's farm sector in the third quarter, thanks to improved livestock prices and useful winter rain in a number of areas. Confidence has ticked up in all the states and across all commodities apart from cotton. Well, joining me now on set is Ben Piction, Senior Macro Strategist at Rabobank. Ben, thanks for your time. Look, just take us back to the start of the year. It seemed like it began with a lot of optimism, but what happened?
Yeah, well, it just didn't rain, Ed. So that was the problem, really. Seasonal conditions were pretty challenging early in the year. We had a pretty late autumn break. That's the period that farmers look for to get a little bit of rain shortly after the seeding period. So that's really important for farmers. And in some key regions around the country, we just didn't have enough rain. So optimism had been quite low in the second quarter of the year. And now, as we're seeing seasonal conditions starting to improve, we've had a bit of a bounce for the third quarter. Yeah,
there's obviously been more rain around, and now we could be seeing more wet weather coming with the return of La Nina. Is that making farmers feel a bit better about themselves and the sector?
It certainly is. So early in the year, we had, there was a lot of talk about El Nino, which usually brings drought. So people were worried about drought to some degree. It didn't really eventuate. The Bureau of Meteorology maybe got their hypotenuse a little bit wrong on calculating that one. But now we're sort of moving towards the possibility of a La Nina system coming into force. And that brings with it more rain, particularly on the east coast. Not without some drawbacks. If you get rain at harvest time, it can actually impact upon yields, and particularly in sectors like the sugar sector. If you get rain at the wrong time, it actually hurts your yields. But broadly, if you're in farming, more rain is a good thing.
Let's look at some agricultural commodities. Beef. Cattle prices did fall last year when the Bureau of Meteorology suggested we were going to have drier conditions. Farmers put a lot of their cattle up for sale and prices went down. But has that sector improved the last few months?
Yeah, it certainly has. So what we've been seeing basically is that cattle prices have been sort of gradually lifting from around about October of last year. So as all of that volume got through the processing plants and we started to see that there weren't as many cows around, we've gradually got the price creeping up. We're seeing more demand coming out of the United States now. Herd levels in the US are at fairly low levels. So we think that there's going to be a strong bid coming out of the United States for quite some time, and that's showing up in pricing for Australian farmers.
Yeah, well, top of the show, we had Don Farrell talking about this new deal with the UAE for trade. Hopefully it's a good thing for Australia's farm sector. But what about the sheep sector? Is that doing better as well?
Yeah, it is. I guess you've got to say, well, compared to what? Because it has been a pretty rough time for the sheep sector, especially in WA, where we have the live export ban is a red hot issue over there in Western Australia. Seeing more market access into UAE is a good thing. That's mainly going to be for boxed meat, and anything that provides more market access to Australian farmers is a pretty positive thing.
All right, what about dairy? On the show a couple of weeks ago, we had a story talking about Saputo deciding to close King Island Dairy. They sort of said how much pressure the dairy sector was under, but from a dairy producer perspective, how are they feeling?
Yeah, so it's a very different story if you're looking at producers versus processors and retailers. The processing sector's been under a lot of pressure for a long time because there's too much capacity and not enough milk coming into the processing sector. But actually on farm, what we're seeing is that there's, I guess, a bit of a bid under prices recently. We're seeing internationally traded dairy prices have been lifting over the last couple of months. And improved seasonal conditions in most of the East Coast areas where dairy is operating is certainly helping production as well. So things are starting to look a little bit brighter for dairy producers.
And grains. Are grain farmers feeling a bit better?
Yeah, tentatively. Pricing is still a little bit of a challenge for grains because there is a lot of grain around in the world. And particularly we're seeing a lot of competition from some suspicious cargoes out of the Black Sea region in Ukraine, Russia.
Is that a cheaper price than elsewhere? Or
cheaper price, yeah. And so there are some pressures just from the amount of grain that is still around. Having said that, we have seen some tentative signs of higher prices just recently, and strong growing conditions is a good thing for farmers, but also some progress on the input side of things is making the on-farm margin picture start to look a little bit better for Australian producers.
So cheaper fertilisers and things?
Cheaper fertilisers, cheaper diesel, maybe an interest rate cut.
Ben Piction from Rabo, thanks for your time.
Pleasure.